This is the Archery Insider, and I'm your insider, Dalton Greer. Let's get into it. The first thing I'm going to go over is going to be the parts of the bow. Let's jump into it. The bare bow. Okay, so it's going to be the most traditional, simplistic style of bow. You're not going to have any equipment on it. It's classified as a bare bow. Okay, and this is going to be a recurve bow versus a long bow. So, right here, we have our recurve bow. There are a few different pieces on here. I'm going to start with this middle section here. So this piece from here to here, this is your riser. So the middle section is the riser. On the riser, you have one of the most notable pieces, which is your grip, which is right here. That's what you will hold on to or grasp while you're shooting, okay? So the grip right there, that guy's phenomenal. We then have our next piece on here, and that's going to be our sight window. So if we hold the bow like we were shooting at this target right here, we have this cutout in the bow from here to here. This is known as the sight window. What this is used for is actually an aiming aid, and it's going to be a little more advanced technique of gap shooting, but we can use this to actually aim with, and this is our sight window. And it's just this cutout from here to here in the bow. Inside of that sight window, you've got another piece, which is going to be your shelf. So this bottom part of the sight window is that wooden piece, that cutout right there. That is known as the shelf of the bow. So if you hear someone, oh, do you shoot off the shelf? This is what they're referring to. Some people opt to not have an arrow rest, which is our next part. This black piece right here, this is a little hook. I don't know if you can see that, but this is just a little hook right here, and that holds your arrow for you. I would highly recommend you shoot with an arrow rest over shooting off the shelf, but it's 100% up to you if you want to do that. So again, if you're referring to shooting off the shelf, they are shooting off this flat part here. If you use an arrow rest, you're using some sort of hook or holder for the arrow, which is significantly more accurate and makes the bow easier to shoot. Okay, so we've gone over the riser, the sight window, grip, shelf, arrow rest. Next piece we're going to go over is going to be your limbs. So you have your upper and lower limbs, and these are just these pieces that attach to either end of the bow, and these actually control the draw weight of the bow. A lot of people think that comes from the string, this piece here, but it doesn't. The power of the bow comes from the limbs, and there's a whole bunch of different materials and different qualities, and we'll get into all that stuff in just a second. All right, so limbs, there's an upper and lower limb. It does matter which is which. A lot of the three-piece takedown bows like this, they will have a slightly higher draw weight on the bottom limb. It's just like a pound more. This gives you some positive tiller, and it's going to allow you to just shoot a little bit further, and it's going to help with the arrow when it comes off the bow. So we've got our limbs here. Then you've got these guys up here. You've got your string notch, which is where the string actually clips on. It's this little notch right here. And then underneath here, I don't know if you can see that, but right under here is called the string groove, all right? That's a groove that the string lies in, and you wanna make sure that the string's in there if you're putting your bow together. All right, so parts of the limb, we have a few pieces. We have the actual limb itself. We have our string notch, and then we have our string groove, which is gonna be under there, right there. And then we have our limb bolt, which is this piece right here. And this secures the actual limb to the riser. So limb bolt. And then the limb goes into this other piece, which is called the limb pocket. And that's this little piece right here. It's just a metal little pocket. Sometimes it's plastic on the cheaper bows. Or some of them don't have a limb pocket at all, and it just seats flat on there and has a peg system to hold it in place. So limb pocket, limb bolt, the actual limb, string notch, string groove, and then we have our limb tips, which are just literally just the very tip of it. It's called the limb tip. All right, so now we're going to go into the next piece, which is your string. There's actually three pieces to the string, which is pretty cool. You've got your string itself. You've got the string loops, which are these loops that go on either end. This is important to know your loops because the larger loop, if you're putting your bow together, will go on the top, okay? So there's an upper and lower part of your string. Big loop always goes on top, okay? Then down here, same thing, you've got a loop, smaller loop goes on the bottom, and that's gonna be, so we have string, string loops. Then you have your serving, and this is a rough material, you kind of hear that. It's going to be what we clip the arrow onto, and also gives us something to hold onto that's a little bit more substantial than the actual string itself. It's a protective coating that is wrapped around the string, and it allows you to clip your arrow on, protects the string. So that's your serving, which is gonna be this middle section right here. And one of the last parts is going to be your nocking point, okay? So this is a knot, sometimes is made of brass. I would recommend not using brass, it's up to you, but this is gonna be tied out with thread usually, and this is going to be an indicator to make sure your arrow is straight when you put it onto the bow, okay? If your bow doesn't have a nocking point, if you just bought it, typically they will not have a nocking point installed. You'll need to install one of those. You can check one of my other videos I have listed, and it is going to be a phenomenal video that goes over how to set your nock point and where it should be for different bows, all that good stuff, and the two different styles of tying a nock point. All right, so that is fantastic. One last little tip here. We've got our stabilizer mounting hole here. So this guy right here is for mounting a stabilizer onto the bow. I'll go over what stabilizer is in a little bit. And we have our plunger hole or burger hole. This is a hole for a shooting aid that helps absorb shock out the arrow. And this is going to be used in the barebow division. That's one of the biggest advantages as far as equipment goes. If you're going to be competing and shooting the barebow division, is a plunger. They're phenomenal. Then lastly, you have your sight mounting pieces. All right, lots of stuff that I went over, right? So we've got a ton of pieces on the bow, but the big thing I want you to remember is going to be your riser, middle piece, your grip and sight window, and then your limbs and string, okay?
All right, guys, this is the Archery Insider. Thank you for watching today. Keep on shooting and keep it in the bullseye. We'll see you next week.